Grimgar of Fantasy and Ash has been a pleasant surprise. Before it started, I was only expecting a pretty art style, but when I watched it, I found it also had insert songs. Oh, yeah, I guess it also had a lot of other good stuff too. And while it definitely has some flaws, it still ended up being one of my favourites of the season. Although I'm not going to be talking about that, I'm going to be focusing on a core aspect of Grimgar that I think it explores really well: connecting with people. Oh, and to discuss this, I'm going to be going into some pretty big spoilers for the show, so I'd recommend not continuing if you haven't seen Grimgar, but you're interested. First, to explain why this is a core aspect, because of the setting. While at the start, it seemed to just be another entry in the trapped in a game genre, which has been popular recently, Grimgar distinguishes itself by having its characters forget their prior lives and be massively inexperienced, so it's made clear early on that them being trapped in the world isn't the focus of the show. This isn't a story about some grand mission like trying to escape the world or defeating the undead king. That story was probably about these guys, so we're left with a much more personal story about our main characters just struggling to survive in this typical RPG world. In this unknown land, they look to each other for comfort. And if you've ever played an MMO or tabletop, you'll know that communication and understanding is vital for a party to function well. In Grimgar, this isn't even so much about progressing, just about making enough money to keep living in a dangerous profession. Connecting with other people can be important in our everyday lives, but for the characters in Grimgar, it's something essential to figure out, which is what makes this a core aspect of the show. Most of all, Grimgar shows the difficulties and how little we can be sure of when trying to connect with other people. Now for a moment, I want to bring up another Trapped in a Game anime, also made by A1 Pictures. Sword Art Online. Whoa, wait up, give me a minute. Obviously, SAO approaches the setting very differently from Grimgar. So why do I bring it up? Well, I want to talk about the main characters. A long time ago, I saw a commenter describing how they saw Kirito from SAO as a deeper character than people give him credit for. He's someone who has trouble forming connections with people, and so devotes himself to games instead. However, he ends up being trapped with other people, and so must overcome his difficulties through the show. It's an interesting perspective on the character, although I don't think it's well represented in SAO, as all we ever see of Kirito is him effortlessly solving problems and causing girls to fall in love with him. We never properly see this difficulty Kirito is meant to have. However, I would argue that we do see this with Haruhiro in Grimgar. The more personal setting really lets us focus on how he is unsure of himself and how he struggles to understand the other members of the party. It's important to note that the concept of connecting with people is pretty vague considering how everyday it is. Here, I am considering it as a mutual understanding between two people, where they can properly express themselves to each other, so communication is a big part of it. However, it's not a very concrete concept. Even if you feel you've connected with someone, communication can break down very quickly. Grimgar explores this in a few ways, but the biggest one is Minato, his relationship with Haruhiro and the rest of the party, and his death. He was the leader of the party and so central to their dynamic. When he dies, the group is shattered and unable to properly express themselves to each other, even though they seemed so close before. Haruhiro struggles to take the role of leader of the party, while him being unable to properly communicate his gratitude to Minato hangs over him. They all quickly realise they took their connections, and Minato, for granted. When your connections with other people are suddenly strained like that, it can be very difficult to repair them, especially when they're also trying to add a new member to the group. Haruhiro sees how hard it can be to form connections as a party, not just with a new member, but with all the existing members who are also struggling to find their place in the new group. Although you can still have moments of genuinely opening up to others, like with Haruhiro and Yume, it can take quite a bit of effort to reach these moments. What's more, you can't even be sure when you have been able to form a real connection with someone. Minato confides in Haruhiro that he feels like the type of person people don't get along with. Even though he seems to bring everyone together so easily, he's afraid these connections aren't actually there. Our connections with other people are constantly evolving, which is what makes them feel so vague and fleeting. Later, Haruhiro describes how he felt he didn't actually know Minato that well. Given more time, they could have been closer, or could have drifted further apart. But his regret is that they never were able to find out.
火の打ちどころのないやつだと思ってた。でも、欠点に気がつかなかっただけかもしれない。短所を隠していたのかもしれない。もっと長く一緒にいたら、別の面が見えてきたかもしれない。
I feel like I've said the name Minato a crazy amount of times and still nowhere near approached how much Haruhiro reflects on him in the show. Since he really is that important to the characters, and how the show explores this aspect as a whole. With Haruhiro as leader, he must also take into account the connections of the whole party, and it can be hard to weigh an individual versus the group. When Mary has trouble forming connections with the rest of the party by being cold and reserved, who has the responsibility to change? They decide to reach out to her themselves and make her feel comfortable. However, when Ranter restrains connections with others by being loud and obnoxious, should he change, or should the party accommodate him? Haruhiro wants for him to change to be more convenient, but recognises that Ranter is an independent person too, and is still trying to form connections and help in his own way. There isn't really an easy solution to these problems, and Grimgar makes this clear. Overall, I'd say Grimgar explores the aspects of connecting with people very well by presenting it honestly. It's difficult. Connections can be vague, fragile, and gradual. I focused on how the characters and their interactions reflects this, but it's worth mentioning that Grimgar supports this theme very well in terms of presentation. It is very slow and deliberate, with lots of time for reflection and setting the tone. A gradual process of their relationships are shown through many montages. After all, we've got to put those insert songs to good use. The tense action scenes can often convey character relationships visually, and while there are a few cliché anime moments like peeking on a girl's bath, these convey a kind of status quo where the characters are comfortable with each other enough to have these moments. I really enjoyed this aspect of Grimgar, and I hope you also find it interesting. Now, before I finish, let me just say that this is a supportive place, and there are no wrong choices in Best Girl. Except Shihoru. Grimgar is available for streaming on Funimation in North America, Anime Lab in Australia, and Animax in the UK? Is that a thing? Huh. Guess it is. It is also licensed by Funimation in North America and Madman in Australia.